You want to talk about PIOS?
Sure, we can talk about PIOS.
So since you mentioned open source, we recently launched our own open source license agreement. It's called PIOS. This allows developers to get help from other developers and collaborate when they're producing Pi applications. We saw a lot of adoption, and we saw that it was even helpful in hackathons. So we recently had a hackathon, and that resulted in several PIOS applications that were built. And the good thing about it is that in the end of the hackathon, before we start the next one, there is a code base that even if half of those applications end up the developers not continuing, who knows, but the next set of developers can potentially start from that code and make some use of it.
I've seen a few people in our space create their own licenses. I typically go with the AGPL v3 license, just mainly because my business partner helped write it back in the day. And I like that it ensures that the things that I work on, I'm not an engineer myself, but as an entrepreneur, I'm helping get these things built, that they'll always be free and open source. Like I like that license. I lean like very copy left. What is in your license? Like, how is it written? Like, what are the benefits of the license? I'd love to read it too. If you can send me the license, I would love to read it. But just like the high level for people, like what does your license mean and what are the implications of using it?
It started by prototyping after the MIT license and has some components inside that are emphasizing collaboration within the Pi network.
Yeah, so it facilitates, building inside the network with each other, while at the same time protects the network itself as well. So it's a high network specific, OS license. That's why it's PIOS, and they facilitate within the network contributions to create applications, one on top of
What protections is it providing to the network? What are you guys protecting the network from?
Basically, for example, preventing of just a complete copy of this network's applications to completely just migrate to another network, for example. It's exclusively within the network.
This enabled a bunch of developers who otherwise wouldn't be sharing their code to feel more comfortable to actually share the code. We find conversations when we're giving grants or when we're discussing with teams of whether they are willing to license their code under PIOS, we find them much easier to result into actually people.
And so for something like Pi, you guys have built a massive network. It's almost impossible to replicate that part. The network, the software that runs Pi could be 100% open source, and no one could, I could copy it. I could figure out how to copy it, but no one's going to use it.